watching closely.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but about 10 or 15 minutes ago, a tragic thing, from all indications at this point, has happened in the city of Dallas. Let me quote to you this. And you'll excuse me if I am out of breath. A bulletin. This is from the United Press, from Dallas. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. They were riding in an open automobile when the shots were fired. The president, his limp body carried in the arms of his wife Jacqueline, has rushed to Parkland Hospital.
In the crisp morning of November 22, 1963, a 24-year-old man named Lee Harvey Oswald got up, removed his wedding ring, and put it in a cup next to his sleeping wife. He whispered that there is money in the dresser, and then stepped out into a day that would forever change the course of history. He showed up here at a Texas school book depository where he had worked for about 5 weeks. That day, the official story says that he shot President John F. Kennedy 3 times from this window on the 6th floor, all alone, and without anyone's help. But here's where things get sticky. The official narrative just doesn't add up. Because once you start digging, the idea of a lone gunman theory begins to just fall apart. And you realize that people who believe in a cover-up might not be as crazy as they want you to think. In every crime, the most crucial element to unravel is the motive, the reason behind the act. When you can figure out the why, it will always lead you to the who. And when it comes to the assassination of JFK, many suspected motive, and some of them had the means to have him killed, but only one. Only one had the power to get away with this. So stick with me. By the time we're done, you won't just be wondering if Oswald was the only shooter. You might even start questioning if Lee Harvey Oswald even shot a single bullet that day.
I'm just a patsy. President.
To understand the JFK assassination, I gotta take you back to the end of World War II. The US had just become the world's most powerful nation. Along with that rise came the creation of CIA, an agency with one mission: protect American interests by any means necessary. But the agency wasn't just gathering intelligence now. Far from this. In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, they were actively reshaping the world. They overthrew government, removed leaders, and replaced them with people they knew they could control. In 1953, CIA helped remove Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, reinstalling the Shah. The following year, they took out President Jacobo Arbenz of Guatemala, plunging the country into chaos. Then came the Congo. CIA played a role in the arrest and assassination of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba. It was a time when the agency, under the direction of this man, Allen Dulles, seemed untouchable, answering to no one. But as the power grew, so did their arrogance, leading to bigger risk and greater secrets. And that set the stage for one of the most crucial and challenging chapters in CIA history, the Kennedy presidency. In the early 60s, the US was in the middle of a Cold War with the rival, the Soviet Union. So when Cuba, just 90 miles off the US coast, fell to communism under Fidel Castro, that didn't sit well with the US. So CIA teamed up with Cuban exile to take out Castro. This led to the Bay of Pigs invasion in April 1961, a CIA plan that was already in motion before Kennedy took office. The idea was simple. Cuban exile, trained and armed by the US government, would invade Cuba. But Kennedy wanted deniability. He agreed to the plan under 2 conditions: no US soldiers on the ground, and airstrikes had to be carried out by Cuban exile pilots. This way the US could always maintain plausible deniability if the operation failed or was exposed. But you see, CIA Director Allen Dulles, well, he knew the invasion would fail without direct US support, but he believed that at the last minute, this young 43-year-old newly elected president would cave under pressure and authorize US military airstrikes. Well, he was wrong. Kennedy didn't fall, the invasion failed. Without air cover, the exile never stood a chance. The Cuban exile felt betrayed by Kennedy, and they were not the only one. Kennedy took the blame publicly, but behind the scene he was furious. He knew the agency had lied to him, trying to push him into a war he never wanted. That's when he made a bold promise to splinter CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. But the agency wasn't done lying to Kennedy. That same week, in April 1961, it was about a coup in France targeting French President Charles de Gaulle. Allen Dulles had a long history clashing with the French president, so he misled Kennedy, claiming that most of the French military was against de Gaulle's decision to grant Algeria independence. But what Kennedy didn't know is that the agency had been quietly discussing plans to remove de Gaulle as far back as 1959, before Kennedy even became president. The coup led by 4 French generals failed almost immediately. When the news broke, it became clear that Allen Dulles might have been involved. Kennedy had to step in, assuring the French ambassador that the US had nothing to do with the coup. But what he told the French ambassador privately was even more alarming. I'm not in full control of my own government. I'm not in control of CIA. So to gain control, Kennedy began to splinter the agency as promised, starting with the firing of the top 3 officials, Allen Dulles, Charles Cable, and Richard Bissell. He then announces that CIA is going to be downsized and cut the budget by 20%. These were Kennedy's first steps toward taking control of CIA, but they also marked the beginning of his own downfall. By March 1962, the focus was back on Cuba. That's when the US military drafted Operation Northwood, a plan to stage fake attacks on American soil to justify invading Cuba. But here's the shocking part. This staged attack would have led to real American death. That's how far some high-ranking officials in the military were willing to go to start a war. Kennedy shut it down immediately. This was again another blow to the military-industrial complex and CIA. But by October 1962, the stakes were even higher. The Soviets placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. Instead of rushing to war, Kennedy made a secret deal with the Soviet leader Khrushchev. The US agreed to remove missiles from Turkey and Italy and promised not to invade Cuba. In return, well, the Soviets agreed to pull their missiles out of Cuba. The deal prevented a war, but back home it made Kennedy's critics see him as weak on communism. But the final blow came with Vietnam, often called CIA's war. Kennedy didn't want to send US troops into Vietnam. This yet again put Kennedy at odds with the military and CIA. From the day he took office, Kennedy avoided war. They pushed for it. The relationship was full of conflict and mistrust. This became very clear when Kennedy gave a speech at American University in Washington, D.C. His message was simple: peace. In that speech, Kennedy suggested that the US might not need to act as the world police. They didn't need to jump into every conflict or revolution. He made it clear that living peacefully with the Soviets was possible. Even if the two nations didn't agree, they didn't have to destroy each other. And maybe it was time to take another look to the role of nuclear weapon. The Soviet leader Khrushchev was so moved by Kennedy's words of peace that he had the speech printed in the Soviet communist newspaper called Pravda for everyone to read. However, back home in the US, well, not everyone liked the speech. To the military and CIA, this wasn't peace. It was weakness. It wasn't in American interests. Kennedy was the voice standing in the way of the military and CIA, who believed that war was the only answer against communism. 5 months after that speech, Kennedy was murdered.